Hi everybody, Heike Yates here, and I'm so excited to welcome a new guest to my show. And her name is Patricia Scott. We've known each other for 10 years and we met through our running activities. Patricia Scott has evolved as she got older, not only being a single mom who moved from France to the US, but she also is a full-time nanny. That's an unusual job, and we talk about this a little bit later in the show. But she's an ultra runner. So I would like to welcome you to the show.
Hello. Very happy to be here with my dear friend Heike.
And did you notice how she pronounced my name? Heike.
Heike. Was it correct?
It was correct. It's perfect.
All right.
So Patricia moved from France long time ago. So tell us, why did you move from France and when?
I moved in 1988 because I wanted something new, more challenges, adventure, and to be on my own a little bit. I'm fourth of 6 kids, so I wanted to be
4 of 6. That's a big family.
Yes, we are, and so I wanted to be me instead of just the middle child.
Cool. When you came here, what year was that?
1988,
Okay.
February 1988. I came for 1 year originally. That was the plan as an au pair. But I ended up staying 30 years almost.
30 years. We're both about here 30
Yeah.
years, which is also an interesting fact since I'm from Germany. France is right next door.
Right.
So, and how interesting is that we met on the trails of Washington, D.C. So when you first moved here, where did you go first?
Virginia.
Okay,
So
you started in
in
Virginia?
Arlington, Virginia. Was a little shocked because I was surprised there was no building like New York City. But I acclimated really well, and then started as a nanny, and then moved from family to family. Even lived in LA for 6 months,
Okay.
and came back to Virginia.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
You have a daughter. How old is she?
She is now 23. Oh my gosh, 23 years old. She's the best, and I did raise her on my own. As a single mom.
So how did you do that, being a nanny full-time and having a daughter that you raised on your own? Was she part of the family, or how did that work out?
I brought her with me to work, so that was perfect. That's why I stayed. That's why I've been a nanny for so long. I wanted to raise my daughter.
Nice.
It was a struggle at first because not a lot of family wanted to hire a nanny with a child, but it worked perfectly. And she fit right with my workout after work. I bought myself a treadmill, and she was. I bought her a little tiny 1 pound dumbbell.
Oh, cute! So incorporating right there.
Right. So I was running on the treadmill for like an hour, a little bit over an hour. So it was anywhere from 5 to 7 miles almost every day.
Okay, let's hear this. 5 to 7 miles. Now that's for most of us already a lot of mileage. And being on the treadmill can be really boring, but I think it's really fun that you have your daughter Rochelle.
Yes, Rochelle is her name.
And have her work out there next to you.
She loved it. She was like jumping, pretending to run, and it was a great. And then a little further down the line, when she got older, it was she was following me with her little tiny bikes and went on like this. So.
Tiny little bikes. How cute is that?
Yes.
Now, as a kid, were you active as a kid?
Yes. We had to in France, especially in my family. We my dad was not the type of dad who would drive us everywhere, so we have to manage to do it. So we walk to school. We walk to school, so twice in the morning, twice in the afternoon. So you average, right, because we came back for lunch at home.
Oh.
So 11:30 to 1:30. And then, and I do remember when I went back at 11:30, that just popped in my mouth. After lunch, since I have a half an hour, I would jump rope.
Oh my God.
30 minutes.
Talk about the athlete over here. I'm like, most of us would do lunch and take a nap.
No. But, so I bike to the store, or I walk to basketball practice and back again. So yes, we walked to the lake, which was about 6 miles.
So that's a very European lifestyle.
Yes.
So we've both been here a long time, and we both find that a lot of times people drive too much. People don't move enough. But in Europe, everybody walks everywhere or bikes everywhere. So
yes, you have to manage basically to go places. And my mother didn't drive, so we didn't have a choice but use our legs or whatever we had as a
whatever we had. Now, since you have legs and your legs have carried you along a long distance, what started your interest in ultra running? Or let me back up a little bit. There's running for normal people like everybody else, then there is marathon training, and then there is ultras. So explain to us, what's the difference between all these running, like road running and ultra running? And
so I got into marathon running by my younger brother, who I ran the Paris Marathon in 2004 or 5, I'm not quite sure. And he dared me to run New York City if he was coming. And
if he was coming.
And I didn't know what the marathon was, so I asked him how many kilometers, and he said 42, and I'm like, what?
It's a long distance.
So it's
it
a long
can take
distance.
a while.
And then after that, I joined Montgomery County Road Runners,
Which is one of our local running groups.
right. And from there, I started to train where I met you. The first time FTM.
Yep. First time marathon training program.
Right. My first 12 mile, I was on top of the world because it was like, wow, I did it. And I wanted more of that, and I really enjoyed it. And then I ran my first marathon. Didn't like it when I finished, but a week later, I'm like, okay, next. And then a couple of marathons later, I heard in the group, there was a few runners who were talking about JFK 50 miler. So I asked, what was the interest behind it? And I'm like, why not? That's a challenge. And I asked about the training, and they basically told me not much. You do 2 marathons back to back almost, and then you add a longer run.
Oh, let's stop me right there. Okay, so a marathon, for everybody who doesn't know kilometers, is 26.2 miles. So, you just run 26.2 miles and you just go, whoop, I just add another couple of whatever, 10, 20 miles on top of it, and you're done. So
Right.
the JFK foot race is one of the very well-known 50-mile races here in the Washington, D.C., Virginia area, Maryland, actually. And so simply Patricia took on the task of doing this race by just running a couple more miles.
There you go. I did I added another extra long run on Saturday or Sunday, whichever was, and then went from there.
That's very interesting. But how long would it take you to run that distance? Let's say most of us are familiar with shorter distances in mileage, but how long would a marathon take? Like 26 miles? Could it take days, years?
No, so it's for me I really wanted to do at least 4 hours. If I could do under, that was even better. Since it was my first marathon, our coaches were like, don't worry about the time, but I'm a very competitive person.
Yes, she is.
So I really wanted to do 4 or under, and I did 3:56. Not bad for a first. Not
very good for a first. And no walking in there. Though this was a road race
right,
on the cement as we know it, right?
Right, which is very different than for example, a marathon on trails. So
on trails meaning what?
No concrete, so it's dirt and roots, and it's basically an obstacle course. It's hilly, so you may walk for some of the hills, and it's okay to save some energy and go from there. So if a road marathon will take me about 4 hours, a trail marathon will take me anywhere from, I would say, another hour. An hour,
additional hour.
Right, depending how technical, meaning technical. When I say technical, I mean by routes and crossing.
River crossings. It includes river crossings. People.
It does, yes. So it depends on all that and how familiar I am with the trail. So the more you practice on it, the more you run on it, the faster you can go and the faster you can finish. So.
Nice. So. Can you think of one training example that was just very different than all the others that you would say, oh my God, I can't believe I did this?
That's funny you mentioned that. My first, so from 50 miler I went to 100 miler. Of course, it was another daring for me.
Just another step up, double up the mileage.
So I did for that. I went to friends who had ran at least 1 or 200 miles because I really wanted to hear their feedback. So of course, advice varies from one person to the next, but one person in particular who ran a few advised me to go beyond 30 miles as a training. So I had ran 20 miles the day before for my marathon training, and the next day I ran 40 miles. And
can you imagine that?
my daughter, my beautiful daughter Rachel, biked alongside me for 30 miles, which was helpful at times. Sometimes we got annoyed at each other, so she would take off. But
so Rochelle has not become a ultra runner. I just want you to know.
No,
she's looking at her mom, going, shaking her head. She'd rather play soccer. So as competitive as her mom, but running is not her cup of tea.
No, it's not her cup of tea whatsoever. But anyway, that day, I almost quit a couple of times because I was on my own. And at mile 30, she said, "Mom, you do your last 10 miles on your own." And I'll kind of cry at some point, but when I finished, I was like, okay, I think I'm ready. Mentally, I think I can finish my first 100 miler.
So you made a good point, is mentally, the toughness that you need. I cannot imagine, I mean, my longest distance was the JFK 50 miler, and that required not only solid training, but the mental toughness to suck up the pain, to ignore the blisters, to maybe throw up by the side of the road because your nutrition is not sitting well. All these things happen.
Yeah, so it was that day was, I started at 8, we started at 8, and by the time I got home, I was on the trail basically until like 5 p.m. So it was a long day, but it was worth it because it really mentally, I was ready when the race came along.
Yeah. So how does it work with working as a full-time nanny? How do you squeeze in these long days of training?
So those long days, I usually reserve them for the weekend. So 20 and 30 will be Saturday and Sunday. And during the week, when the girls were at school, when I was training for my ultras, in that case, I was just doing it as much as I could when they were in school. So first thing in the morning, or while they were at soccer, for example, I would actually do my first run in the morning while they were in school. Then I would pick them up, go to soccer. While they were practicing for an hour and a half, I was going on the trail for that long period of time. So I had 2 workouts done that way. Mm-hmm. When I couldn't do it because the girls were sick or because it was summer vacation or spring break, then in that case it was before they got up and after I was done, which was challenging because at 7 p.m. nobody wants to go out there and
and it's dark.
So it would take me about, I would say about 2 miles to really get okay. I got this. I can finish that 6 miles.
So when you think about that, you're out there for hours and hours on end. What is the time that it takes you to finish a 50 miler? So let's say we had your under 4 hours for a marathon, which is 26.2. Now we have the next big step is the 50 miler, and that takes you about.
So 50 miler, we had 12 hours to finish it, and I ran it 3 times, the JFK.
12 hours.
And I finished it the first time because I had no clue what I was doing. It was 10:45. And it took me 3 tries to finally break 10 hours. So it was 9.
Break 10 hours? Holy smokes! This is a tough race. This is a tough race.
Yes.
So then, as you go to a 100 miler, what's then?
100 milers, my first one, we have to finish it in 30 hours.
30 hours.
And we have this. How do you say it? When you go at certain aid station, you have to be at cutoff time.
Cutoff time.
Mm-hmm. And the first one, they weigh you, which really made me paranoid.
Oh, so why do they weigh you?
So they weigh you before the day before the race starts. So like in the afternoon, and then randomly on certain aid stations. So if you lose 10% of your weight, then it's a red flag and you might be disqualified. They pull you out of the course. or if you gain some weight, that means your kidney is not functioning properly, and that's another red flag, and you might be out the course as well.
Out as well.
So the first 100 mile was Vermont, and my husband, my special husband, who's my crew, that means he carries my bag from aid station to aid station. We do not sleep. I do not. I don't want him to sleep either.
Which is another question. Let's backtrack 1 second about the nutrition. When you train for a 100-miler, we're talking ultras. Let's talk about 100-miler, because this lady is doing nothing else but marathons and 100-milers. How do you train food-wise for a race like this? Do you, as we all know, we carb load, right? We eat lots of
Right.
pasta.
Right, which is my thing. I try to eat as much as I can during my training run, which is very little. I'm still struggling with it. I'm really big on banana because it sits well in my stomach. I try to have crackers and peanut butter. Pretzels is good. Chips for the salt is good as well. Goo, which after 20 miles I don't want to hear.
So what is goo?
Goo is an energy product, I should say, that gives you a little sugar and electrolyte and caffeine, which
So the body can metabolize it easier because it comes in a, not almost a liquid, but a gel-like form. So you can just squeeze it in your mouth.
or
And-
what I have is the Coca-Cola one, which is chew and
Okay, you do have the
right,
chewable.
yeah.
So for the preparation, you don't really eat anything different than what
No.
you normally do.
No,
You don't
'cause-
pack on pounds before the race, so you are at a certain weight when you start out.
No, I never
Oh.
even bothered to do any of that. I don't really change my diet much,
Uh-huh.
except a week prior I kind of cut off certain foods,
Like?
fruit and vegetables.
Fruits and vegetables.
Right, not as much, or some towards the like 2 days before the race I will not eat any because I don't want to go to the bathroom.
We'll
Well,
talk
not
about
the-
that
we'll talk about
later. But as you're running through the race and you're in the middle of the nowhere and your husband Will is at one of those aid stations, what do you eat then and drink?
Oh, I had a hydration backpack which I
Uh-huh.
carry, and I usually fill it up with. I put a couple of chips in little tiny bags, chips or pretzels or my last 100 miler that I didn't finish. I try a new thing. I'm from France, so I love French baguettes, right? And I thought so. I brought some French bread that didn't really do me too much good. So
Interesting. French
Right.
baguette, only the French would do something like this.
Right. So
Maybe as a German I should bring a brat. Worst.
But usually I carry a couple of bananas in my backpack, and hoping the aid station usually are about an hour and a half apart, and I don't really eat that much for me to. I never ever ran out of food in my backpack.
But you have food when you get to the aid stations.
So
they have
it's-
all kinds of
Oh,
stuff.
it's fabulous. They have
smorgasbord.
fabulous. It's like you can sit down and you wish I try not to, but it's everything and anything you want, from burgers to soup, from burritos. Who does that? Not me.
I love peanut butter jelly personally. That's my favorite.
Funny you mentioned that second 100 miler. It was about 2 hours before the finish, so I've been on my feet for 25 plus hours, and I was tired of bananas. I was tired of goo. I was tired of chips. And there was peanut butter that was the last aid station, and I'm like, why not? And that gave me that kick.
Peanut butter jelly sandwich on white bread is the kicker for me
Right.
too. So
yeah.
you were out there, you have food stations, so you got your drink and your Gatorade or whatever else, water, they have all of this, but you have your own stuff. Now, being out there for 30 hours, oh my God, what do you wear?
So
When you go on the
depending on
trail,
the depending on the weather, if the weather is, I know it's going to be close to 60 at the end or towards the middle. I don't like to overdress on races because I don't do well. So I usually wear shorts, which I did. My first 100 miler was in July, so I was perfectly fine. We had a little bit of rain. I never changed.
Okay.
I was fine except for my shoes. I got a couple of pair of shoes that my husband was carrying with him because it had rained a couple of weeks in Vermont, so the terrain was extremely muddy, and I had just changed my shoes, and as we entered the trail again, I got mud all the way up to my ankle, and it's heavy, so I changed it again. So except my shoes, and I normally do not change it at all. My second 100 miler, I wore the same one. If it doesn't bother you, if you don't have any blisters, I don't touch anything usually. I leave it be.
Yeah, so they have aid stations too. If you have blisters or getting chafed or any other issues that most of the aid stations
somewhat
have first aid.
The Mohican one didn't have any aid station, so you were basically on your own.
Oh.
Because it was on trails, and if something happened, then you'll be. I know a few runners who had to pop their own
blisters. Woo! That sounds a little woohoo.
I got lucky, and it was fine. I had after a while, of course, you had ache everywhere, but
it's like walk like a zombie. But one question that I know all women, I want to know: what do you do when you gotta go to the loo?
Okay, for me, number one, I can find a big tree, so I usually trail off a little bit off the course, not to be a little discreet, and I'm fine. I have no problem doing it. Now I'm freaking out about number two. That was always a big. I have not had to do it yet. Cross fingers.
Well, you never know, right? That's
never
why you're changing your diet before.
Right.
So no fiber or very little fiber.
A couple of days prior to the start, yes, I do not have any fibers to minimize the likelihood of happening. But yeah, so everything is possible. Yeah, you hear stories. Woo! You don't, yes, but so far so good.
Because I'm just envisioning out in the woods. I have no problem putting my behind in the woods, but yeah, sometimes it can be a little touchy-feely, right?
Right. So you found you go a little further, I guess, and then found a tree. And
have you tried? Okay, let's move on. I want to talk about. Tell me about some of the obstacles that you have had to overcome in your training, whether they're injury related or weather related, because you're spending a lot of time out in the woods training on the outside. So let's talk about what happens when it's a big snowstorm, for instance. What do you do then? Shovel snow?
Well, could do that, but that's not my forte. So I could do the treadmill and do a 20 mile on it, which not my thing either. I've done 17 on it one time. But there was a, I got a drink again.
Okay, let's start again. Just keep it here. Just take time. Just take time. I get some water too. Don't worry. Because the good thing is, like I said, we can just cut it out. Where did my water glass go?
I think, yeah, too good.
Okay. So that's the good thing. It's like,
Okay,
and that's, with, I cut it up with iMovie, and so I can just splice it out, do whatever.
Okay.
It's getting warm too, from the lights.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay. I was wondering, because I'm not getting any hot flash yet.
Okay, I'm gonna start again with the same question. Okay, so, because we had light, hold on. So let's move on into talking about obstacles, or some obstacles that you had to overcome, whether weather related or injury related, that you have all these years that you've been an ultra runner had to deal with. So tell us something about that.
So weather related, that could be an obstacle. So if the road are icy or too much snow, that could be a problem. You can go to the gym and do run on the treadmill. But one year I had to do a 20 miler, and in my neighborhood, someone had shoveled about a mile clear on the sidewalk. So what I did, I did back and forth for 20 miles. It took me over 3 hours. My neighbor was a little worried, so he came out and wanted to know if I wanted anything. And my daughter thought I was insane, but I felt good afterwards, and sat down on my couch with my hot cocoa, watched a movie, and I felt great. So
Up and down, 20 miles.
20 miles,
Oh my God. Well, that is
it's just go. I went into my head, and no music. It was just me and my thoughts, and I went into completely a zone.
Mm-hmm.
And
Do you run with music on the trail?
No, I do not. I used to, not on the trail at all.
Okay.
Because I want to be aware of
Safety, big safety concern,
Yes.
because we both see a lot of women runners that are ignoring the caution.
Oh yes, and I'm
And-
already in a zone by myself without no music. So if I add the music, I'll be completely.
Yeah, so that's,
No,
I
no
agree
music.
with that.
So I have actually stopped running with music for over almost 10 years.
Yeah,
When I heard stories.
yeah, that's because especially when you're out in the woods too, there's not a lot of people
No,
there.
there's not. Like 2 weeks ago, I went to do. Actually, that was last Sunday. I did 12 miles on the trail by myself, and there's no one. It was kind of around noon, and I encountered a family biking on the trails. But other than that, so it can be very. I know the trail really well, but it can be kind
Isolating,
of
yeah.
Yes.
So what do you do? Injuries. You must have some injuries. You
Yes,
superhuman nutcase.
No,
You.
unfortunately, I did have I'm just recovering from tendonitis. My riding coach took about a year, and then you modify. You cross train. If you cannot run that many miles, then you're on the bike. Elliptical is another one because it's not as many pounding, and you go from there. But it's not the same high, I will say. But slowly but surely, I have to keep up to keep my endurance up. But yeah, I have my years of injuries by far. Yes.
Do you support your ultra running with other types of exercise?
I
other
try
than
to.
during the
Yes.
during injury periods.
I try to do twice a week lifting weights,
Mm-hmm.
spinning class as well. I like to do it at least twice a week. Sometime I don't, but when my mileage increases, and I have to run twice a day, and so that kind of being on the side, instead of doing twice a week of lifting, I do once a week. But I try, if I cannot go to the gym and do that, I try to do push-ups and anything on the floor with my own body weight, basically.
No equipment needed. I'm always saying easy peasy. You
Right.
don't need to
Your
belong
own
to
body
a gym.
will-
Yep.
yes,
Yep,
your body
I
will
agree.
work.
Now, one question I have. I mean, Patricia has this really hot husband.
Yes, he is.
Yes, he is. So, Will, the really hot husband, which is totally supporting Patricia, but so there she is. She's running hours and hours. She has a daughter. She is a full-time nanny, and she has this hot husband. How do you manage all of this, and how do they support you?
Well, starting with my daughter, when I started the ultra running, she was a teenager, so she was finishing pretty much high school, and then she went away for college, so that was not really a problem. My hot husband,
He is.
Will, who he's a former bodybuilder, and he's exercise physiologist, his background right now. Spent as many hours at the gym lifting as I am outside running.
Oh, how convenient.
So, right. So he does 1.5 in the morning hours and 1.5 in the afternoon. So we each have our own passion, which I would advise for anybody who wants to keep up going with what they like. And it works. As a nanny, full-time nanny, I just walk around it early in the morning. So I'm up at 4, meet a group at 5:30 on Thursday, and run for 10 miles with them. And
In the
then-
morning, that is, right?
In the morning,
Mhm.
yes. Same thing, I do it on my own as well, pretty much every morning. I'm at 5:30, I'm out the door and do that. And if I don't have the time that morning, I can do 6 first thing in the morning, and then I can do 4 or 5, which sometimes it's easier to split it, like that you don't feel pressure, and you get it done. So
Because that's one of the questions I sometimes get too is if you run long distances, is it okay to split it?
absolutely, yes. I would advise even sometimes it's better than to try to squeeze 10 miles and risking injuries So by speeding up, because when you run, when I'm training for ultras, which is very different than training for marathon, it's very, the pace is much slower. So you don't want to rush it. And if you cannot run 10 miles in the morning, then 6 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon. And sometimes you can go beyond, which sometimes it happens, and you end up having more than you have planned. So splitting is okay.
Okay. What is your personal biggest challenge while running long distances?
Personal
Challenge. What is a challenge for you running those long distances? What is it that you have to do to get better at, or to learn better to do?
Nutrition is a big thing. Hydration as well. I'm not a big eater to begin with, and
As you can see, petite little thing.
but I try to be better at it, and I'm working on it. And it's not easy, but it's. I was told by you, my great advisor, that the more you eat, which is true, the more energy you have. And multiple times I encounter runners in those long races, especially this young woman who was on the course of finishing under 24 hours, which is huge in ultra.
Wow.
And
that was a 100-miler,
it
right?
was a 100-miler. And because she didn't eat properly and not enough, often enough, she got sick and couldn't have anything down, and she had to quit. Like I'm out 80, 85 or something like that. So it's very important to keep it up, to keep your energy up, because you will eventually hit the wall.
Mm-hmm. So that means you run out of glycogen,
and then you completely, you need something to pick you up. Another thing that I like to do on ultras, for me, is I don't drink coffee, but I drink Coca-Cola. The full sugar one, no diet. I don't drink it at all in my regular lifestyle, but it really hit me during those ultras. So that's a must for me.
Coca-Cola, I found too, it's flat. There's
right.
bubbles.
They leave it on the course and little tiny cups, and I just drink.
That sits well with my stomach too.
Yes.
Now, you're preparing for. You have some goals that are coming up. Really big race that she's preparing. I'm so excited because I'm hoping that if we get to those goals, that I can help you.
Right, and you did promise me that if I get in Western State 100, she will be pacing me after mile 70.
So I'll be running behind her before, next, or wherever for 30 miles.
Right, but to get to that part, I have to run a 100-miler that will qualify me to enter the lottery for Western State. I've done 2 of them. Unfortunately, I was not lucky, and because last year I tried to finish the Mason Newton.
Is it a 50-miler?
It's a 100-miler.
100-miler.
In Virginia, and I bumped completely on mile 54 and decided to quit. So that's I'm back to square one.
So you have to accumulate points, or you have to.
That's not for this one. So I'm gonna sign up again for Mason Newton. 100 in December.
Okay.
The race is in May, and this time I will train properly, meaning I will go to older training race, which I did not do that.
Lesson learned.
Lesson learned. And again, enter for the Western State, crossing fingers, hoping. And then my biggest one is UTMB, Ultra Mont Blanc in Europe.
Clearly, Mont Blanc, French girl right there.
So it's started in France, we go to Italy, Switzerland, and back to France.
I'm not part of that. I may come and just visit and travel.
But this one is really out there, and you need to have points. So it's, even though when you acquire all these points, it's through the lottery and the likelihood. So I'm hoping to have it, to get in before age 55.
So Patricia hit her not too long
50,
ago.
yes.
Long ago.
Last
So
month.
she has so far not dealt with any hot flashes or any menopausal side effects, but that's also a little tricky because as endurance athletes, we oftentimes don't notice when we're changing, when we may have a hot flash because we're running, we're hot all the time, we're sweaty all the time. We are oftentimes fatigued from the races we do or the training we do.
Right, so we don't really, I think, associate both of them, but so far so good.
Well, we'll keep you posted on Patricia's progress as she hopefully gets to the Western states or both even and the Mont Tremblant. But I want to finish today and ask you. I'm sure the question everybody I want to know. What would you tell other women that consider getting into ultra training?
Go for it. I really will say it's really a man's world out there still. We're very limited on women. I would say 10% of the field is men. But be prepared and don't be afraid. You have to put the work into, meaning hours and hours on trails, and be prepared for anything mud, crossing of any stream, and some days you'll be fun, some days you would hate it, but it's okay. It's okay to walk. It's just another approach, and you'll love it. It's just a different training by far.
Yeah, being out in nature on the trails, and people are so super friendly. I find everybody
a camaraderie that is so different than the road races.
Yeah, it's not about flashy clothes. It's not about fancy shoes. It's about hitting the trail, persevering, friendship, helping each other out.
Oh, by far. And everybody's willing to give you the best advice. There's competition, don't get me wrong. Competition's out there. But they are so willing to give you one more advice just to help you to go further.
Yeah.
So, women, go out there.
I agree. We need more women in ultra running.
Yes.
And you know what? I can only wholeheartedly agree with everything you said about the training, the nutrition, and it does take time. And you know, women at our age, and I'm 56, we're changing things as we move along. Our lives are changing. And I find that the kids may have moved out, like in our case, and we have more time to do something new. It may not be an ultra, although we both encourage you to check it out. But we have an opportunity to do different things in our lives, to explore something that we may have just heard about, whether it's ultra running, skydiving, traveling the world, cooking a new meal, or learning a new skill. I mean, now it's the time.
The sky's the limit.
The sky's the limit.
The sky's the limit.
So I want to thank Patricia for being here today. This was a lot of fun.
It was. I loved it.
So Patricia is also, if you, I will leave in the show notes email address so you can contact her if you have any questions about ultra running or need ideas or advice. Because also Patricia is a certified running coach.
Right.
So she knows her running inside and out, from a short distance to a long distance, and how to approach it with the loved ones in mind. So with that, we're out of here.
Bye.
Bye.